Welcome to Global North. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon for more updates and thrilling short scenes. In November 2025, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney met with Chinese President Xi Jinping, a moment that would mark a turning point in Canada's foreign policy. The world watched as these two leaders signaled a seismic shift in global diplomacy, one that would reverberate far beyond the summit's walls. This was no ordinary handshake. It was a calculated response to mounting economic pressure and increasingly hostile U.S. trade policies that had left Canada in a precarious position. For years, Canada was squeezed between two superpowers, forced to navigate a delicate balance. But Carney's bold pivot to China redrew the map of North American trade, opening new corridors of opportunity. Facing punishing tariffs from both the U.S. and China, Canadian industries, especially agriculture, were reeling, with farmers and manufacturers feeling the brunt of the trade war. Carney's outreach was a strategic move to break the economic siege, diversify Canada's partnerships, and secure new lifelines for struggling sectors. This wasn't just about accessing new markets. It was about survival, asserting independence, and ensuring Canada's voice was heard on the world stage. With U.S. relations at a historic low, Carney refused to simply endure the pain or accept Canada's diminished role. Instead, he recognized that relying on a single, unpredictable partner was no longer viable in a rapidly changing world. By turning to China, Carney laid the groundwork for a long-term realignment, aiming to insulate Canada from American protectionism and foster new alliances in Asia. This act of diplomacy sent shockwaves through Washington and beyond, forcing allies and rivals alike to reconsider Canada's place in the global order. It proved that middle powers like Canada can shape their own destinies with smart, courageous statecraft, even when the odds seem stacked against them. Carney's pivot is more than a headline. It's a defining moment for his leadership and for Canada's future, setting a precedent for generations to come. Even under immense pressure, diplomacy remains a leader's most powerful tool, one that can reshape a nation's destiny when wielded with vision and resolve. The once close U.S.-Canada relationship, long considered one of the world's strongest alliances, has collapsed in dramatic fashion. What was once a model of cooperation has now devolved into a bitter trade war under President Trump's second term, sending shockwaves through both nations. In October 2025, Trump abruptly suspended all trade talks and threatened a crippling 10% tariff on Canadian goods, an extreme response triggered by a single critical TV ad from Ontario that aired during a high-profile U.S. event. This was just the latest in a series of aggressive moves that had been building for months, each one escalating tensions further. Tariffs of 35% were slapped on a wide range of Canadian products, from lumber to agricultural goods, disrupting long-standing supply chains. Even harsher penalties followed, 50% on steel and aluminum and 25% on autos, crippling industries that had relied on cross-border trade for decades. The integrated North American economy was suddenly fractured, leaving Canadian industries in chaos and uncertainty, with thousands of jobs at risk. The America First agenda now treated Canada as an adversary, eroding decades of trust, prosperity, and shared progress between the two countries. For Canada, the economic fallout was immediate and severe. Businesses struggled to survive, jobs were threatened, and the future looked increasingly bleak. With few options left on the table, Mark Carney, Canada's leader, was forced to look beyond the U.S. for new partnerships and opportunities. This hostile environment set the stage for his historic pivot to Asia, seeking new allies and markets to secure Canada's future. The old foundation of trust had cracked beyond repair, and Canada now faced the daunting task of charting a new, uncertain course in a changed world. Facing a wall to the south, Carney found himself at a crossroads. The long-standing reliance on the American market was no longer sustainable, and the need for a new direction was urgent. Carney turned east with a clear strategy, determined to diversify Canada's economic future and reduce vulnerability to shifting U.S. policies. In late 2025, he embarked on a high-profile tour of Asia, visiting Malaysia, Singapore, and South Korea. His mission: to double non-U.S. exports, forge new alliances, and reduce Canada's dependence on the American market. The highlight of the trip was a pivotal 40-minute meeting with President Xi at the APEC summit, the first such engagement between Canadian and Chinese leaders since 2017, signaling a potential thaw in relations. During their discussion, Xi expressed a genuine desire to restore stable relations, opening the door for rapid resolution of trade disputes and hinting at broader cooperation in the future. This was remarkable, given the recent tit-for-tat tariffs and diplomatic tensions that had defined Ottawa and Beijing's relationship for years. Carney's pragmatic approach prioritized national interest over past grievances, seeking not just a temporary truce, but a fundamental reorientation of Canada's global role and economic alliances. Meetings with other Asian leaders reinforced this broader strategy. Canada was actively building a new network of economic partners, expanding its influence and opportunities across the Pacific. The message was clear: Canada would no longer be defined solely by its U.S. relationship, but would chart its own course on the world stage. Instead, it would shape its own destiny as a globally connected, independent trading nation, forging ties with partners old and new. The Asian gambit was bold, and it was working, as early trade numbers and diplomatic breakthroughs began to validate Carney's vision for a new era in Canadian foreign policy. Carney's diplomatic breakthrough with China is remarkable given the fraught history between the two nations. The crisis began in 2018 with the arrest of Huawei's Meng Wanzhou in Vancouver, sparking years of retaliation and mistrust. China detained 2 Canadians in response, and the standoff dominated headlines until all were released in 2021. Even after allegations of Chinese interference in Canadian elections fueled suspicion and made rapprochement politically risky. Despite this, Carney managed to move past years of mistrust and recent trade hostilities. Both sides recognized the economic necessity of cooperation. For Canada, it was a way to counter U.S. pressure. For China, a chance to gain a Western partner. Carney's pragmatic diplomacy focused on future opportunities, not past conflicts. This reset was a testament to the power of economic realities over old grievances. International trade wars hit hardest in Canada's heartland. When China retaliated in March 2025, Canadian farmers, especially canola producers, were devastated by crushing tariffs. Western provinces faced economic ruin as silos filled with unsellable grain and debts mounted. The pain was acute and personal, with farmers caught in a geopolitical crossfire beyond their control. Provincial premiers became vocal, urging Ottawa to drop tariffs on Chinese goods to restore access to vital markets. Their pleas gave Carney's outreach to China urgency and a clear goal: reopen agricultural markets. The stakes were not abstract. Restoring trade was a lifeline for thousands of families. Carney's success in Beijing was a direct answer to these desperate calls. For Canada's farmers, diplomacy meant survival. Carney's deal with China is more than a win for farmers. It's a strategic blow to Trump's playbook. Trump's tariffs relied on Canada's dependence on the U.S. market, assuming Ottawa had no alternatives. By opening new channels with China and Asia, Carney shattered that assumption. Diversifying exports shields Canada from U.S. economic pressure and weakens Trump's leverage. Now, if U.S. markets close, Canadian goods can find new homes in Asia, blunting the impact of American tariffs. This forces Washington to rethink its strategy. Canada is no longer isolated or easily bullied. The North American trade equation is now trilateral, not bilateral. Carney's diplomacy gives Canada a stronger hand and proves that middle powers can outmaneuver superpowers with smart alliances. The balance of power has shifted. Carney's pivot to China is hailed as genius because it not only solves an immediate crisis, but also redefines Canada's future on the world stage. In the short term, this bold move offers hope to industries battered by trade wars and economic uncertainty. But its true brilliance lies in the long-term vision, moving beyond dependence on the U.S. for trade and opportunity, and fully embracing a multipolar world where influence is shared among many nations. By building strong ties with Asia, Carney ensures Canada's prosperity isn't hostage to Washington's shifting whims. This is economic independence, bold, risky, but absolutely necessary for the country's future. Navigating new partnerships will be complex and require careful diplomacy, but the cost of inaction was far greater for Canadian workers and businesses. Carney's leadership has shifted the balance of power, offering a blueprint for a resilient, independent, and forward-thinking Canada. In a world of giants, Canada is confidently charting its own unique path forward.